And I believe that we can take that principle as a foundation for all further discussion. Educational decisions based on race are unconstitutional. Where I think we have a disagreement is in a philosophical question, which in my opinion goes to the most profound philosophical questions before us. And that is, what is it that's important about a human being? It is my belief that what is important about a human being is what does he know, what can he do or she, what is his character or hers, and similar kinds of individual questions, and not what race that person happened to have been born into. And I believe that that is a fundamental philosophical principle that underlies the belief system of the United States of America and its Constitution. And that based on that principle, we didn't even need this statute. That the ethnic studies program was already unconstitutional under this principle that the professor and I totally and emphatically agree on. People are individuals. They are not exemplars of a racial group. And in my view, what race you happen to have been born into is completely irrelevant to anything. In school, in society, in the courts, as President John Kennedy said, race plays no proper place in American life or law. In the summer of 1963, having just graduated from high school, I participated in the March on Washington, in which Martin Luther King said, and we all remember it since then, "I dream of a day when my son will be judged by the content of his character and not the color of his skin." And that has been fundamental to my belief system my entire life, and I believe it is fundamental to our Constitution. Now, what we have here is a situation, we're talking about the public schools. And I believe that it has been a fundamental purpose of our public schools historically in this country to take students from different backgrounds, to mix them together, and to teach them to treat each other as individuals. The Ethnic Studies program in the Tucson Unified School District does just the opposite. It divides students by race. Now, I'm fully aware that none of the courses are exclusionary and that you can go into a course if you don't belong to that race. But the numbers of people not of that race are very small. The courses are primarily divided by race. So we have Raza studies for the Latino kids, we have African American studies for the African American kids, we have Asian studies for the Asian kids, we have Indian studies for the Native American kids. It sounds just like the Old South that I fought against back in the 1950s and 60s, only now this kind of new racism is being promoted by the left, whereas the old racism was being promoted by the right. But dividing students by race is racist, no matter whose ox is being gored, no matter who's doing it, no matter who claims to benefit from it. If you divide students by race, it's a racist program. Now, in the standards, and as you know, I was the superintendent of schools. In the standards promulgated by the state of Arizona, it is required that all students learn about the contributions of different cultures. America has been enriched by the contributions of different cultures, emphatically including Hispanic culture, which I am a serious student of. I have been seriously studying the Spanish language for the last 3 years. I do my interviews on Univision in Spanish. I read Mexican history in Spanish books. I believe very strongly in the contributions of different cultures. But what we require in our school system, and what and I'll explain in a moment, we have a right to require in our school system, is that we teach students the contributions of different cultures. We don't divide them up and then teach each group only about its own contributions. School emphatically is a place to broaden horizons, not to narrow them. And to take students and divide them up and say, you are in this race, therefore you should be in this class, and we're going to teach you only about the contributions of that race, is, in my view, not only contrary to this statute, but unconstitutional under the very principle that the professor said, which is educational decisions based on race are unconstitutional. And public schools in the United States of America in the 21st century have no business dividing up students by race. We should have gotten over that at the time of Brown versus Board of Education, and it's one of the profound ironies that the left side of the political spectrum in the United States today is advocating the division of students by race and teaching them only about their own race, instead of using schools to broaden their horizons, to learn about the contributions of all different races, and to teach them to treat each other as individuals. And that's where we get into the statutory provision that says we should not be teaching ethnic solidarity. Ethnic solidarity is a racist concept. We should be teaching students that we're all individuals and we should all respect each other as individuals. If you tell me that somebody is Hispanic, you've not told me anything important about that person. I want to know what he knows, what he can do, or she, what is their character, not what race they were born into. Now let me just give you, you say time, I just want to, before I finish, if you give me just 1 minute, I want to do two things. First of all, I want to read you a passage from the curriculum so you know what we're talking about. And I'd love to hear the professor's comment on this. And I have a lot of them, but I'll read only one short one in view of the time. And second, I want to say a brief word about the right of the state government to set curriculum in our schools. In the class, they use a field guide for achieving equity in school. This material states the following. We often hear people referred to as being privileged, which usually is a comment pertaining to the individual's financial or economic status. In courageous conversation, that's what they call this, courageous conversation. However, privilege takes on a different meaning. It refers to the amount of melanin in a person's skin, hair, and eyes. This is followed by a table which promulgates racial stereotypes by detailing the differences between what they call white individualism and colored group collectivism. Listen to this racist language, white individualism and colored group collectivism. White people tend to dominate the conversation by setting the tone for how everyone must talk and which words should be used. All of these white ways must be recognized, internalized, and then silently acted on by people of color. The aforementioned white cultural characteristics, such as individualism, blur into the consciousness of whites, which becomes not only a way of behaving, but also a way of thinking. White people depend on the overwhelming presence of other white people in positions of power and influence to maintain a system of racial advantage. At the same time, many white educators believe that gains in school, as in their own lives, come from individual effort and accomplishment. I want to ask, how many people here believe in these generalizations about white people? Raise your hand if you believe in these generalizations about white people.
White privilege?
No. That white people dominate the conversation. White people, well, that is very interesting. You see the effect of ethnic studies.
What?
Because white people and all other people are individuals. Some of them think as individuals, others think collectively. You cannot tell how somebody thinks, those of you who raised your hand, about individuality or about collectivism or about racial advantage or what gains come in schools. You don't know that by knowing their race. I know a number of Hispanics who are much more conservative than I am. You don't know anything about somebody by their race. And this curriculum is promulgating a racist philosophy that tells you that what's important about people is not their individuality, but their race. One final point, and that is on the right of the state to set curriculum. Under our system, the state sets standards. And under those standards, schools are held accountable. If they don't teach the standards, they can be subject to sanctions. So, for example, if we say you teach algebra in the 10th grade, and instead of teaching algebra, the students are taught arithmetic, and the kids can't pass an algebra test, the state has a right to sanction that school district, including withholding funds. The state has made a determination that in the curriculum of the public schools in Arizona, we are going to treat people as individuals, and we are not going to teach them to treat each other on the basis of their race. That is entirely within the rights of the state of Arizona in its public school system. Thank you very much.